Hello, lords and ladies of the realm. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka MID Sophia, here to break down for you guys the latest episode of Game of Thrones. We are on Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 3, Oathbreaker. So, spoiler alert before I dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be bearing all in this review. And for those of you who keep track of my weekly reviews, you may have noticed that my review of the second episode of the season was very late. I just got back from Disney World. What can you do? So that video is finally up. There's a link in the description to that if you'd like to check that out before this video. But without further ado, I'm going to do my best to recap all of the events of this week's episode, which I feel like I'm going to start overusing the word game changer because that seems to fit just about every single episode that we have had in the season so far, which, yes, there's only 3, but we're kind of on a roll here, if I'm not mistaken. Yet another impressive episode filled with revelations throughout, and I really love the way that we are kind of going back to go forward, and that's something that we really seem to be doing a lot of with Bran's storyline, which I'm really glad that the writers actually held off on introducing these things because we had a lot of business to take care of in the 5th season. But now that we are experiencing the past through Bran's eyes as he trains with the Three-Eyed Raven, and we go back into the underpinnings of Ned Stark's story, it's so crazy the new insights that we get to mine through these visions, through these tales, through and beyond time. And we also see that Bran is kind of starting to get himself into trouble in that respect. Now I will get into all of that shortly, but in order to kind of keep things with the flow of the episode, we of course begin with the awakening of Jon Snow, who is back in the business and slightly in the nude, but what can a guy do? Not exactly his fault in that situation, but you know, get a couple of Botox shots in the mix as he very, very confusedly and in great panic comes back to life. And luckily, Sir Davos is right there to give him a good old pep talk and get him back into the land of the living. Melisandre, of course, kind of has her faith rekindled, seeing that her miraculous act did in fact work. So she believes that since Stannis was not the prince that they once thought, that it's got to be Jon Snow, and that perhaps he has a higher purpose even than returning to his position as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. And we see by the end of the episode that that certainly seems to be the case, because this individual, Mr. Jon Snow, just threw in the towel, put in his resignation notice, effective immediately, and is tromping off into lands unknown to do who knows what. But he's had a bit of a midlife crisis, mid-death life crisis. I don't know what the crap you want to call it, but I certainly can't blame him for feeling that his world has been shaken, because it totally has. We also learned that the afterlife is kind of a black void, at least in Jon Snow's experience. I mean, maybe he was still in transit, maybe he didn't have a long enough time in the land of the deceased to actually see anything. But that's not exactly a comforting thing, to be able to recall not only the fact that you were murdered, but that there was nothing really good waiting for you afterwards. So suddenly he's back, and instead of basking in the glory of being in a place where he would not expect to be, he feels the wrongness and the strangeness and, you know, cue the existential crisis. Again, it makes a lot of sense. I can only imagine how that would feel. And really, honestly, I can't. The human mind is not meant to conceptualize that stuff. So, but of course, once he emerges and is clothed again in his Lord Commander's garb, you know, Tormund Giantsbane proceeds to make a good old dick joke, and his friend Ed also makes a joke about Jon's lacking sense of humor and how he can't believe that it's actually Jon Snow because he said something that made him laugh, and you know, all these little hee hee ha ha moments of, hey buddy, how's it going? Trying to sort of ease him back into things, and Jon seems to reciprocate and try to, you know, appreciate the situation and the fact that yes, he does in fact still have some friends. But as to who he's going to be spending his upcoming days with, we really have no idea now, do we? So there's that. We also get a little glimpse into the seafaring voyage of Sam, who is embarking with his son and Gilly for Old Town and the Citadel, where he is going to train to become a maester and, well, he thinks will be in a position to someday help Jon Snow. Of course, not exactly sure how fast news is going to travel in his direction, and whether or not what's transpired with Jon Snow is going to change his mind or approach or career path, you know? I'm not sure exactly how linked Sam's fate is to that of Jon Snow, but I'd like to think that they're connected like that, so we'll see how that plays out. But anyways, so he is super seasick, and Gilly tries to, you know, be present and there for him and distract him with saying like, oh, did you know that I thought that the sea was called the sea because it goes on for as long as you can see? So, but as it turns out, the therapeutic qualities of her cute little stories were not enough to keep him from retching a time or two. But she also comes to learn that Sam intends to send her to Hornhill, his home, where he has a lovely sister and his parents, and thinks that they would be treated better in his homeland as opposed to the Citadel, which doesn't really have a place for women and children, which it seems like there's a lot of aspects of society that don't cater well to the needs of women and children. So, as suckish as it is, Gilly, like a regular old Ruth from the Bible, is ready to go the distance and follow Sam to heaven and hell and anywhere in between or beyond, but we'll see where they end up. So now this, of course, takes us to the past that Bran gets to visit with the Three-Eyed Raven. And so we see that Ned and Howland Reed is his name. I know that his first name is Howland, but he, I believe, is the father of Mira, if I am not mistaken. So the two of them are going up against the King's Guard, and we come to a point where Ned is fighting the Sword of the Day or Sword of the Morning, Sir Arthur Dayne. And as the story goes, he successfully bested Sir Arthur Dayne, but as Bran sees, that's not quite the case, because Dayne actually had Ned pretty well beat until Howland stabbed him in the back. All of this, of course, is taking place at the Tower of Joy, which I saw some articles discussing that, and I'm trying to make sure that I have all the names and places because I know that I'm very bad at those things. So that's the scene, and Bran is so transfixed by this, seeing how sort of history as it is told is not always history as it actually occurred. And I know this very well, considering the fact that I received a lot of my education in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and there's this narrative of like, oh, and Columbus discovered America, and all these great stories that are passed down, and we find out in fact that there were a lot of atrocities that took place and things that kind of get completely smoothed over in the grand scheme of things. So Bran's kind of having that same experience and is a little bit shell-shocked to see how things actually turned out, and to see what his father was fighting for as well. Now we also see that Ned is looking for his sister, and after he and Howland take out Sir Arthur Dayne, they hear a cry from the Tower of Joy. So now on another note, I don't know if this is related or not, but people are saying that they have a strong feeling that we're going to find out who Jon Snow's parents actually are. And other stuff about Ileana? I forget her name. But it was brought up in the preview for the episode. So I think that what we're going to discover very soon is more information about Ned's sister. And there's going to be some kind of crazy revelation there. So it's on its way. But once again, Bran has to get pulled back to reality because he gets a little bit too invested in the moment. And as his father is beginning to scale the path to the tower, Bran calls out, "Father," and Ned turns around as if he hears him. But now once Bran is brought back, the three-eyed raven has to remind him that, you know, the past is already written. The ink is dry. Don't get the ink wet, shall we say. But it would appear that Bran is a little bit of a deep sea diver, and he wants to only get further into the past, and I fear could potentially wind up altering something in the timeline. And I don't know. This is, you know, kind of like sci-fi stuff here, but we'll see how that goes. And if the three-eyed raven can keep him in line and teach him everything he needs to know before he can leave the Cave of Wonders and go forth and do whatever it is that he's going to do. But yeah, so pretty crazy stuff. Now, we also get to follow Dany to Vias Dothrak, I believe is what it's called, with the Dosh Khaleen, the widows of dead Khals past. And she continues to hold her head high and to proclaim that there is a terrible mistake that is being made. You know, she is the great liberator, the mother of dragons. She does not belong in this kind of place. She should not be resigned to this fate, but still no one listens to her, so she is deposited here in this place before the High Priestess, who seems actually somewhat sympathetic towards her and kind of smirks as Dany, you know, rattles off all of her eloquent titles. And this woman actually remembers when she ate the, was it the heart? Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember what organ it was. Whatever it was nasty and all over her face. But that is something that this woman remembers. And she also remembers too, being the wife of a Khal and feeling that she would be in a position to conquer the world, as Dany feels that she is. And yet her husband has passed, and now here she is. You gotta get with the program. There is one catch, however. Unlike most of the widows and former Khaleesi's who are here in this temple dwelling, whatever you want to refer to it as, unlike them, Dany has gone off into the world and tried to make a new life for herself. I say try, but I mean, she's done a heck of a lot, and who knows if these women are going to get to hear of her exploits in Meereen, but they do know that her reputation precedes her. And that's going to cause a bit of an issue as far as whether or not she's actually permitted to reside here with these women, and that a terrible fate could befall her if it turns out that she is not eligible for residency. So we'll see what happens, man. But in the meantime, of course, we know that Tyrion is starting to get her dragons loosened up a little bit, so anything is possible. I tell you what, if you put Tyrion at the reins, well, you're gonna get some interesting results. That's what I anticipate anyway. So let's see, we go back to Meereen, where Varys and Tyrion are kind of playing, you know, true detectives and attempting to get to the bottom, or shall we say, to the top of the issue with the Sons of the Harpy. They're trying to figure out who is in control and where they can nip this business in the bud, so that way societal progress can actually be made here in Meereen. You know, they're trying to be productive in their newfound positions of power, and I dare say that they're going places. We actually get to see Varys speak to Valen, I believe her name was. She was a prostitute and co-conspirator who murdered the Unsullied alongside the Sons of the Harpy. And Varys decides to get answers from her not by using torture, because torture often yields the wrong information that is skewed and under duress. He decides instead to use appeasement, to make her happy, as he says. And he also brings up the son of this woman and asks her to consider taking a little ride to Pentos with a bag of silver, starting a brand new life, because she knows that if she elicits any information, that she could very well be killed. And of course, if not killed by the Sons of the Harpy, offed by Varys and his guards and armed forces that are at his disposal. So Varys is able to get information about who is funding the rebellion in Meereen. But in the meantime, we get a good 5 minutes with Tyrion, Missandei, and Grey Worm as he tries desperately to make some form of meaningful conversation and invents a drinking game involving only himself in the process of trying to make up an innocent game that is not involve drinking. It all comes down to him drinking. So quite delightful stuff. You gotta love the comedic relief that Tyrion offers. And he is not only that, of course, he is a meaningful contributor to a lot of really powerful stuff that's unfolding in the show. But the fact of the matter is that he continues to entertain like nobody's freaking business, and I appreciate the crap out of his existence and what he contributes. So, you know, there's not a lot of good side talk. They don't really actually form a game to play, but Varys returns in due time with the news that the masters of Astapor, Yunkai, and Volantis are funding this business. So it is time to send some little birdies over to the foreign masters. As Varys says, he does not trust people, but little birds they're pretty reliable. And then immediately afterwards, we cut back to King's Landing, where Qyburn is speaking with the little birds, of course, and he offers them various treats and other assorted goods in exchange for their services of acquiring information. So it makes sense that the little birds would be children, because who would ever suspect a thing from them, you know? And so if they are so perfectly trained as to get information and news, then it's pretty much the perfect system. I mean, it does make you kind of raise an eyebrow, because it's like, it's technically exploiting children, but I mean, I just have to hope that there's not ulterior stuff or abuse that's going on in the situation. So I don't know. But Varys and his little birds, man. Now you know, if you didn't know before. And then, of course, there's also a lot of stuff that's revolving around what to do with Sir Gregor Clegane, who is back up on his feet, and not a lot of people are excited about that, not the least of which is, well, the members of the small council are a little off-put by the giant zombie man and what exactly it is that he's capable of. Now, Jaime puts forth the idea that they could actually use him in a trial by combat against the Faith Militant. But in lieu of that, or in the meantime at least, Cersei really wants to get some of her own little birdies to disseminate across Westeros to find out who is speaking ill of her, who her enemies are, and who she needs to put on her shit list. Because, ladies and gentlemen, Cersei Lannister is the new Arya, and she's making quite a sizable list of people to exterminate or deal with in whatever way she sees fit when the time comes. So that appears to be her current trajectory. She wants whispers, and those whispers are probably going to breed a great war. We'll see how all that plays out. And then, of course, the council completely dissolves as soon as Cersei and Jaime try to show up, so they get to kind of become their own small council, shall we say. A little bit of a civil war here at King's Landing, but is that any surprise? And you know, for as much as I have despised Cersei, I'm at the point where it's like, I kind of want to see her get a win. I really kind of do. Say what you will about me, but I'm interested in that. I really am. And also, it looks like Cersei is going to form an uneasy alliance with Elena Tyrell, who's on the small council, of course. And I would love to see those two mad women put their heads together and get some work done. That would be great. Now, in the meantime, Tommen pays a visit to the High Sparrow. But for as much as Tommen wants Cersei to at least be able to see the resting place of Myrcella, the High Sparrow proceeds to spin the conversation in a different direction and talk about, you know, the virtues and the otherworldly beauty of motherhood and how the gods drive all things in the world and work through all people and all this stuff. And poor Tommen, he's very emotional. He's not exactly thinking rationally, and the High Sparrow seems like a very wise and approachable man. But I do think that we're going to find in him a far greater enemy than meets the eye. I mean, I already know a lot of people who very much dislike him, and I'm kind of in the same boat, because he puts on this air of wisdom, of righteousness, of even humility too. And yet the things that he allows to take place, the things that he stands for, and the things that he's willing to do to others in favor of atonement is really pretty reprehensible stuff. So I'm not a fan. But now we also get to return to Arya's daredevil training, and while she is fighting against the waif, we also get to see these intercut scenes of her. They play the game of lies, and she's asked about Arya's past and who was on her list and all these things. So it's like they're trying to expunge the past from her by making her recall all of these things about her former name and her former identity. And ultimately, she's actually given the special liquid that restores her vision, because she proves that she is now committed to serving the many-faced god, and that she is truly committed to being no one and nobody. We'll see how long that lasts for her, because we know just how strong Arya's sense of selfhood is. Gotta see how that goes down. Now, we also get to see that a representative from House Umber comes to the new Lord Bolton, Ramsay Bolton that is, and in favor of a partnership with House Bolton against Lord Snow and the wildlings, he brings the gift of Osha, Rickon Stark, and the mother freaking head of the direwolf Shaggy Dog, which, oh my Lanta, can we stop killing animals in this show? Much less ones that are named and that we are attached to. Really grinds my gears. I'm not having that. So, once again, so much no. And the episode ends on the resounding mic drop that is Lord Commander Jon Snow disposing of the mutineers, hanging the four betrayers, and then ultimately hanging up the towel, passing his leadership to Ed, actually his friend, and then saying that his watch is ended. So he's back from the dead and he's forging a new path. Who knows what it's going to mean, but it's going to be something that inevitably moves heaven and earth. So that is the episode this week, ladies and gentlemen. Oathbreaker. So if there's anything that I forgot, anything else that you want to chat about in the comments below, I'd be more than happy to do that. If I made any mistakes in the facts that I discussed in this review, I would love for you to lovingly correct me below, such that I may ensure that the proper knowledge is is going around. So thank you guys so much for watching this really long review. I love you, appreciate the crap out of you, as I do Tyrion. And as always, I will be back before you know it.